Early game basic unit possession in Evil Dead is bad for this game, and it will kill this game if it continues. Now, listen to what I have to say. Before you comment anything, listen to what I have to say. I'm begging you. Because you might be a demon main out there who's ready to just jump down my throat, go into the YouTube comments section and be like, hey man, you're just another one of those influencers, one of those survivor mains that's entitled and just wants the best demon strat to get nerfed. I promise you, it's not about the balance. What it's about is the gameplay loop. And it's about the fun factor on both sides, not just Survivor, but for Demon as well. So after the most recent balance patch, we saw an actual buff to basic unit possessions, where now they've made it so that headshot damage on possessed units of all kinds now deals less damage. They made it so it's harder to break the balance bar of possessed units. And even if you do break the balance bar of possessed units, they're not stunned for as long. And this is a really, really bad change because this change doesn't really affect the top 1 or 2% of the player base, because I can only assume that the most recent balance patch was a series of severe survivor nerfs followed by very strong demon buffs, because their data, whatever they're looking at, is telling them that survivors are too strong. Now, I don't know if that means that the general player base said the survivors are too strong, or if they're looking at that the top percentage of the player base, survivors are too strong. I think even the most survivor-brained of players would agree that if you have 4 players on the survivor team who are all very good, they're all max level, they're all communicating, they're all working together, it's just a super sweat squad, that survivors definitely have the advantage, even against the best of demons. So I would say that the only explanation has to be that the devs are balancing around that idea. They're balancing around the idea that all 4 players are working together extremely well. But here's the thing. This buff that they've given to demons and basic unit possessions in general really doesn't affect those players. Like giving them 100 extra health on the balance bar and only having them be stunned for a half second less, that's not really going to affect super sweat squads that all stick together and are perfectly optimized. Like they're still probably going to beat down possessions as soon as they're dropped in. And in fact, super sweat squads, for the most part, if they're extra sweaty, are probably not going to fight at all. They're probably all going to get into their own car and split up. That seems to be kind of the strategy among these super sweaty squads. So the only thing that it really impacts are solo queuers, like myself, people who play this game without a group, and it makes it even harder to succeed as a solo player. And that's not good for the future of this game. But let me go even further than that. The main reason that this hurts this game so badly is that I think even people who say that early game basic unit possessions are balanced would agree your best strategy to counter it is to vault windows like that Ash just did and like I just did right there in order to avoid the units, or to hop into a car and simply drive away. I'd say even demon-brained players would say that that's the best strategy, that if you don't like basic unit possessions in the early game, you need to run away. That's the counter to it. The problem is that's not a good gameplay loop. The problem is that if the early game is all about the survivors running away from the demon and not interacting with them, that's not fun for either side. Does a demon, ask yourself, if you're a demon main out there, do you think it's fun if all 4 survivors jump into their own car and just drive away from you for the entire match until the dagger and pages step? Is that fun and interactive? No. It's not fun as a demon to have to chase survivors who just run away from you in cars. That's lame. Is it fun as a survivor to just not fight anything, not even participate in combat for the first like 10 minutes of the match and just run away the whole time and hop over a window 50 times? Is that fun? No, it's not. And now you might be thinking to yourself, well, it's not fair because demon mains, that's their best option. Their best option is to possess basics. That's true. So I don't necessarily blame demon mains for doing that. The problem is with this balance patch, they should have went and buffed elites, bosses, even more so than they did. They did buff elites and bosses, but even more so than they did, and then nerfed basic possessions in the early game. I don't even mind if basic possessions are strong in the mid to late game. The problem is the early game when they're possessing basics and they're just wearing down the team. And it's such a strong strategy that it basically means if you're playing solo queue and you even have one person on your team who doesn't know how to counter it or isn't playing with the team, you lose. It's absolutely brutal and punishing. And the point that I was trying to make earlier is that if the devs are looking at the absolute sweatiest survivor squads as their means of balancing this game, this buff to demons and nerf to survivors doesn't really affect them. So it's not even going to accomplish their goal. All it's really going to affect are the solo queuers, the people who are not coordinated, who are not using voice, who are not like super sweaty. That's who it's going to hurt the most. In my opinion, I think that's the majority of this player base, and that's really going to drive people away. So overall, what I'd like to see is a buff to boss units that makes them actual bosses so that when they come out, everyone has to work together to beat it. Because at the very least, if bosses are so strong that the entire team has to be together or you lose, at least then you have to wait until demon level 10 before that happens. Right now, I'm playing games where the demon player's spamming basic unit possessions and they're ending the game in the first 3 minutes. And it's like, I'm doing everything I can to help my team. I'm playing like Evil Dead 2 Ash, and I'm using my exorcism ability to take care of the basics. I'm one-shotting basics, but they could just keep spamming it over and over and over again until eventually it just wears you down. And that's the big issue too with this balance patch, is that because now it's harder to break their balance bar and they're not stunned for as long, that gives them a greater opportunity to deal a little bit of chip damage to your team before they get killed. And so then that means that it's going to become even easier for them to wear you down over time and wear out your resources. And again, like I said, I don't think this really affects the sweat squads. It really only affects the player base that probably was losing most of their games to demons anyway. So it's a very frustrating balance patch to see. I really hope that we see some changes to it later, because it's not necessarily about the balance of it and how strong it is. It's that the gameplay loop stinks. The gameplay loop is not fun. It's terrible. Like, I want to interact with the demon in the early game. I want to fight units. I want to fight the basic possessed unit. If you're telling me, no, the way you're supposed to play is just run away all game until you get to the dagger or pages step, that's awful. And the player base is going to keep bleeding players. People are not going to want to participate. And it's a really, really bad system for newer players, for brand new players, because they join the game and they're like, "Ooh, I want to see what Evil Dead's all about. Is this, going to be a fun game? Like, how does it?" And then they're dead in the first minute. And they don't even know what just happened. And that's awful for attracting new players or maintaining your player base. People are just going to leave and go to the next thing. And I'm not saying this like, just, nerf demons. I'm saying give demons a better option besides basic unit possessions in the early game. Make a build centered around elites viable on every class and not just the puppeteer. Give every class a viable build that's centered completely around bosses, that makes them like a flat out raid boss. That would be really cool. Give demons the option to make basic possessed units a thing that they could go in on, but make it so that it really only ramps up and becomes super devastating in the mid to late game, not within the first 2 to 3 minutes like it is right now. So, hey, now that you've heard what I had to say, you let me know in the comments how you feel and whether or not you'd like to see these changes, or if you agreed with the most recent balance patch changes. Let me know what you think in the comments, and if you made it this far in the video, don't forget to subscribe. I'd really appreciate it, and thank you for watching.